We continue to look at developments here on the first day of the Leaders Summit here in Nazareth in Johannesburg. And for a part of Johannesburg that had experienced hail and rain just a short while ago, including thunderstorms at some point, it was quite scary. It's actually gone all quiet now, so at least we're able to hear each other as far as conversations are concerned, but also speaking about some of the important conversations that have taken place. We saw a short while ago French President Emmanuel Macron speaking to journalists on the sidelines of the Leaders Summit, speaking about the fact that he's concerned about the situation in Ukraine, expressing concern. They're saying that the shared problem, the unique problem that the G20 countries are faced with right now, he says it's the problem of Russia, and it also then segues into the conversation around the war in Ukraine, and also speaking about the issues of Lebanon, as well as touching on a number of other issues, including Sudan, as far as also the African continent is concerned, because the issue of Sudan, it's catastrophe. It's one that has gone unreported for quite some time, and it is one of those issues that really is just a devastation at a humanitarian level that is unspoken of. And some of my guests tonight will try and speak about this, because when we talk about the issues of inequality, which is a crisis right now, an urgent crisis that needs to be addressed, it speaks about some of those issues to say who gets the attention and who doesn't, but also you add the other issues as well, as far as how the issues of equality and inequality are being addressed. And I do have with me Winnie Byanyima, UNAids Executive Director, as well as Professor Jayati Ghosh, Professor of Economics at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. Thank you so much to you both for your time. Looking lovely, I must say. Thank you for coming. And I'm going to start with you, Prof. When you look at inequality, we cannot continue anymore to speak about it as if it's something that is quite far off, something that is still there, that we still need to deal with. It's urgent. It is urgent. And it's a matter that if it's not dealt with now, it's actually going to cause untold damage.
Absolutely. That's precisely what we say in our report, that it's an emergency, just like climate change is an emergency. And it's an emergency because of the manifold consequences that it has. It's not just the injustice of it all, the rich getting richer, the poor getting more fragile and insecure lives and all of that. It's not just the geographical inequalities that you talked about as well. It is the fact that now we have inordinate power and concentration of wealth at the top. So the top 1%, the top 0.1%, the top 0.0001% have huge control over all of our lives, over resources, over media, over how we even think. All of these things are happening, and the ability to influence governments, the regulations, the institutions, the policies, all of this matters, because that is what then drives the poverty, the insecurity, and the lack of trust that people have increasingly in institutions.
And it's also because they have their own agendas, right, that they're driving, a minority, a very minute agenda they're driving, which does not benefit the majority of the world.
Indeed, when a small number of people at the top capture so much wealth, they don't use it just to enjoy, have good holidays, enjoy their lives. No, they take it and they use it now to shape the policies that a government makes. They buy the lawmaking process. They put a lot of money in elections. They pay lobbyists, so they get parliaments to make laws that suit them, not suit ordinary people. They take away the power of making laws. They buy the media. So you find that in a country, the media is owned by a handful of very rich people. It covers the issues with a particular view for them, so the voice is gone. They capture the judiciary. You find that the judges are also making judgments to favor corporations, to favor wealthy people. So the effect on the democracy is that it is eroded by extreme wealth at the top. And so in our report, we say that it's an emergency.
Yeah.
Just like climate emergency, because if it continues, then there's total capture of power. You have what I think Professor Stiglitz and others are calling oligarchies, where it's people very wealthy people who control the economy, who control the politics, and for their own interests. So to stop that, we have recommended that there is an international panel on inequality of eminent researchers who know and who study this continuously, and that regularly they publish reports about inequality, the state of inequality, the trends of inequality, the impacts of inequality, the consequences, and the policies that can reduce it. Because just like it's created by us, it can be undone by us. We have policies that can reduce it.
And Prof,
so we want this now to be what comes out of this meeting.
And I agree. And Prof, I understand, especially when you think about the cross-border effects that it also then does have, right? Because yes, we may think about South Africa, and maybe you just say here in this country, but it's not just about South Africa, it's not just about the neighboring countries. It's got some serious cross-border effects.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, a lot of it also has to do with the international architecture and the international rules and regulations. Think of intellectual property. Why are certain medicines so expensive that ordinary people cannot access them? Life-saving medicines, for example. Because of intellectual property laws that allow private companies to maintain the control over the knowledge, have the monopoly, and decide on prices, even when they've benefited from state support. Why are we unable to deal with climate change? Why is Africa not full of solar power when it has so much sun and wind? Because the technologies that it needs are not available to it. Why are so many countries ridden with debt? Because the crazy laws that keep always favoring creditors means that you end up paying so much more interest than the big governments in the north that have bigger debt but pay much lower interest.
Prof, I'm going to ask that we just fix your mic a little bit. Don't be surprised. They're coming. They'll sort you out in just a moment. But Winnie, let me come back to you, because when we speak about this issue, I don't know what for you it feels like to actually have this report, a very important body of work, find expression and representation in a forum like this one, where you have leaders who are sitting gathering, and some of them would have different ideas and different ideologies, different beliefs of what could be causing inequalities, and yet South Africa decided this is going to be one of the focus areas. I said I'm a proud African today, because really it is the credit of President Ramaphosa and the courage he had as a South African to say inequality is going to be at the heart of these discussions of G20 here in our country. You are the country that has seen the worst of inequality. Your history has landed you that title of being the most unequal country in the world. It is your history. It is a history of this continent. So for South Africa to lead on this and say, let's look at it, it's damaging our prospects of growth, the whole world. Our growth, our ability to deliver for our people is slowed by inequality. Social cohesion is undermined. There's social tension where there's extreme inequality, and our democracies are being hijacked by the super rich. So let's talk about it. Let's find a solution to it together. So we congratulate South Africa and President, because this is not a usual issue for the G20. They have tended to want to talk about how do we generate growth. It's almost like it's growth for growth's sake. Because you can have growth that's going into the hands of a few people, or you can have growth that is benefiting everybody. But he's put this question on the table and said, let's have a panel of not politicians, but experts who bring research to us every year to tell us how to deal with it. So really, South Africa has done us proud, and by bringing this on the agenda. And for us, we are just honored to have been chosen as 6 people to write a report for him to stimulate the discussion. And Prof, it speaks about something I heard you speak about with my colleague Sherwin, and it really struck a chord, because if you still have the fights, right, about how much do you put as far as the developing countries' agenda on a forum like the G20, for example, with the developed nations like the US, for example, saying that whittle it down, we don't want such a long agenda, and then you have the developing nations saying, no, we actually want some developmental issues. And you say, if this is not put on the agenda, if issues of the global south are not on the agenda, you actually, as a G20, running the risk of being irrelevant.
Yes, I think the brilliance of President Ramaphosa's presidency of the G20 is that he went beyond G20 in a way. In other words, he has raised issues that are so important for the whole world. He has included so many other countries, so many other African countries, other guest countries in the process and in the discussions. And he has created, I think, the possibility of initiatives like this committee that do not have to rely on the G20, that can be operating independently as a sort of pluralistic initiative of a few countries, a few governments getting together. We already have 3 countries championing it and many other countries willing to support it. Today, the European Council said they would support it. The African Union said they would support it. International institutions are supporting it. The UN Secretary General said he's willing to take this agenda forward. So it can occur, and this is something that really needs to be on the global agenda. People need to know about it, so they can hold their governments to account, saying, here are the things that are happening, here is what can be done about it, what are you doing?
You say it's calling for a coordinated, a commitment, an international approach to deal with this. What does that look like, particularly when it comes to the collective?
Well, ideally it would be multilateral, that every country in the world, well, you know that the world today doesn't really allow for that. But if groups of countries agree and they say, yes, we will tax our extremely wealthy at a minimum tax rate of 2% of the assets, or we will do the following things to plug the loopholes that enable illicit financial transactions, that's already huge. That already forces other countries to respond.
And Winnie, as a final one then, especially because I'm looking at this report, right, and speaking about nationally, for example, some key facts. Nationally, 83% of countries have high income inequality, and this is using the World Bank definition of inequality. These countries account for 90% of the world's population.
Yes.
And it does speak about a giant shift that you were talking about earlier on, that is needed, that has to be urgent, that has to be focused, that has to be done. At whatever cost, it has to be done.
Yes, the majority of people in the world are living in a country where inequality is very, very high. We found that. And that really means that it's a problem that has become so entrenched across the world. But yet we also know that there are countries that have been deliberate and have been reducing it through their policies of social provision, education, health, social protection, policies of empowering workers with living wages, with good conditions of work, social protection. So we know from the research that some countries are able to move it down, while others, it just keeps rising. And we get into a state of accepting it like it is rain that's fallen from heaven. No, it is not. It is what we have allowed to happen by taking certain paths. If we change course and take other policies, we can have safer, fairer, just societies. And that's what we are pushing for here, and that's why we congratulate South Africa.
I can speak to you both the whole night, but I'm not allowed. I'm already getting the eye from some of our producers, but thank you so much for talking to us. Really an important conversation, because as earlier on we were talking about the issue of the high debt, for example.
Yes.
If that's not being addressed, you are going to have perpetual inequalities that are going to continue systematically. So let me thank you both for your time. Do appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're a great host.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
much. Very good question.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Thank you to you
Thank
both.
you.
And of course, that is how we wrap up this discussion, right? And we are going to be continuing to get you more reaction on just this particular subject and more, because there is a lot of reaction here as far as this issue is concerned. You think about some of the issues of inequality. Winnie, Byanyima, UNAids Executive Director, and also Professor Jayati, Ghosh, Professor of Economics at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst.